It is the 5th of May, 1945. The war in Europe is collapsing. Berlin is burning. And in a quiet pine forest near Bly, Oregon, a pastor named Archie Mitchell parks his car along a dirt road and watches his pregnant wife and 5 Sunday school children scramble down a slope towards something peculiar lying in the undergrowth. He hears one of them shout. Then the world goes white. 6 people die in that Oregon clearing, the only American civilians killed on United States soil by enemy action during the entire Second World War. And the weapon that killed them had been launched from Japan 3 days earlier, riding the jet stream across 9,000 kilometers of open Pacific Ocean. It had no pilot, no engine, no radio, no guidance system of any kind. It was, in the most literal sense, a balloon. And yet, the United States government was so disturbed by what it represented and what it could have delivered that it classified the entire program, suppressed all press coverage, and kept the truth buried for nearly 38 decades. This is the story of the Fugo. By late 1944, Japan was losing the war in ways that its military leadership could not publicly admit. American B-29 superfortresses were beginning their systematic demolition of Japanese cities. The Imperial Navy had been gutted at Midway and Leyte Gulf. Supply lines across the Pacific were severed. And yet, deep within the Imperial Army's 9th Military Technical Laboratory in Tokyo, a group of engineers and meteorologists were developing something that required none of Japan's dwindling resources. No aircraft carriers, no trained pilots, no refined petroleum. What they needed instead was paper, hydrogen, and wind. The Japanese had known for several years that a powerful and consistent atmospheric river moved eastward across the Pacific at altitudes between 9,000 and 12,000 meters. Western meteorologists would later call it the jet stream. The Japanese called it the kamikaze, the divine wind. And in 1944, they decided to weaponize it. The logic was simple and deeply alarming. If a balloon could be launched from Honshu at sufficient altitude, the jet stream would carry it across the Pacific in approximately 3 days. It would arrive over North America carrying incendiary and anti-personnel bombs. Given the vast expanse of the American and Canadian wilderness, even a small percentage of successful detonations might trigger catastrophic forest fires along the Pacific coast. Fires that would strain emergency services, destroy vital timber and infrastructure, and above all, demonstrate to the American public that their homeland was not invulnerable. The psychological dimension was arguably the entire point. The engineering challenge was extraordinary. A balloon capable of crossing the Pacific needed to maintain a near constant altitude for 70 to 80 hours across extreme temperature variations. At night, the hydrogen would contract as temperatures dropped, causing the balloon to descend. During the day, solar heating would expand it, causing it to rise uncontrollably and burst. Either deviation would kill the mission. The solution devised by Lieutenant General Sueki Kusaba and his team at the 9th Technical Laboratory was a self-regulating altitude control system of remarkable ingenuity. The balloon, roughly 10 meters in diameter and constructed from washi, a traditional Japanese paper made from mulberry bark, was fitted with a circular metal chandelier suspended beneath it. From this chandelier hung 32 sandbags, each weighing approximately 1 kilogram, and 4 incendiary devices, along with a single 15-kilogram anti-personnel bomb designed to detonate on impact. The control mechanism worked as follows. An aneroid barometer continuously measured altitude. If the balloon descended below a preset threshold, roughly 9,000 meters, an electrical circuit fired a small explosive charge, automatically releasing 1 sandbag. The balloon, now lighter, would rise back to operational altitude. If it descended again, another sandbag would drop. This process could repeat up to 32 times, giving the balloon enough corrective capacity to survive the full trans-Pacific crossing. When all sandbags were exhausted, the incendiaries and the anti-personnel bomb would be released automatically over whatever terrain lay below. A final charge would then destroy the balloon itself, eliminating evidence. The paper envelope was constructed by thousands of Japanese schoolgirls and women working in military gymnasiums across Tokyo, gluing together strips of washi into panels, then sealing the seams with konnyaku paste, a traditional adhesive made from a type of Japanese yam. Each balloon required approximately 600 individual pieces. In terms of manufacturing, it was a cottage industry in the service of a continental strike. Production began in earnest in the autumn of 1944. Launch sites were established at 3 locations along the eastern coast of Honshu, at Otsu, Ichinomiya, and Nakoso, selected for their proximity to the Pacific coast and favorable wind exposure. Between November 1944 and April 1945, an estimated 9,300 Fugo balloons were launched. That figure, it should be noted, comes from post-war Japanese records that may themselves be incomplete. The balloons rose swiftly to operational altitude and disappeared eastward into the Pacific darkness. American radar could not track them, American fighters could not reach them, and for several weeks after the first launches, American intelligence had no idea what was happening at all. The first confirmed recovery occurred on 4th November 1944, when a United States Navy patrol ship recovered a partially deflated balloon from the ocean off San Pedro, California. Military analysts initially assumed it was a weather balloon. More fragments followed in Montana, in Alaska, in British Columbia. By early 1945, the U.S. Army had pieced together the broad outlines of the program, and the response from Washington was, in retrospect, extraordinary. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. The Office of Censorship issued a formal request to every newspaper, radio station, and news agency in the United States and Canada. Do not report on the balloons. Do not report on recoveries. Do not report on damage. The reasoning was entirely sound from a military perspective. Japan was launching the balloons blind, with no way of confirming whether any had reached their destination. If the American press remained silent, Japan would receive no confirmation of success and might eventually abandon the program as ineffective. It worked. The Japanese, receiving no intelligence from their trans-Pacific missiles, concluded by early spring 1945 that the program had largely failed and scaled back launches significantly. The cost of that silence, however, was that ordinary Americans in the Pacific Northwest had no idea what the strange objects occasionally drifting through their forests actually were. No warnings were issued, no public guidance was given, and on 5th May 1945, Elsie Mitchell and 5 children paid for that silence with their lives. By contrast, Germany's parallel research into long-range delivery systems, principally the V-1 and V-2 rocket programs, required enormous industrial investment, tens of thousands of forced laborers, and dedicated launch infrastructure across occupied France and the Low Countries. The Fugo program cost a fraction of that in material terms. Schoolgirls and mulberry paper against the most advanced rocketry in the world. Of the estimated 9,300 balloons launched, current scholarship suggests that between 300 and 1,000 reached North American soil or territorial waters, though many of those recoveries were never formally logged. Confirmed detonations caused isolated forest fires in Oregon, Montana, and Michigan. One balloon came within a few hundred meters of the Hanford site in Washington state, where plutonium for the Trinity test and the Nagasaki bomb was being produced. A momentary power interruption there, caused, investigators later confirmed, by a balloon's trailing flash cord snagging a transmission line, briefly interrupted cooling systems for one of the reactors. The full implications of what might have happened have never been publicly assessed. The program was formally declassified only in the 1970s. Surviving Fugo components are held at the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum in Washington and at the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. Several near-complete examples exist in Japanese military collections. The graves of Elsie Mitchell and the 5 children are in Bly, Oregon. Return for a moment to that pine forest, a Sunday morning, children running towards something strange in the undergrowth, and consider what the Fugo actually was: a 10-meter sphere of handmade paper filled with hydrogen, guided by nothing except the wind and a mechanism built from watch parts and sandbags, crossing the largest ocean on Earth with no engine and no pilot, and landing within striking distance of the facility that was building the weapon that would end the war. Japan launched 9,000 of them. They cost almost nothing to produce. They required no rare materials, no specialist factories, no trained aircrew. They were invisible to radar and unreachable by fighters, and for a period of 6 months, the United States government was so alarmed by what they represented, not what they had done, but what they could carry, that it chose to let 6 of its own citizens die in ignorance rather than risk confirming to Tokyo that the device worked. The Fugo did not change the war, but it demonstrated, with terrible simplicity, that the distance between an enemy's workshop and your own backyard was not measured in kilometers, it was measured in wind.